All right, let's get right into a proper Premier League thriller. This is a story about an unstoppable winning machine, a really cunning underdog, and a plan so audacious. It actually involved rearranging the stadium itself. Yet, you heard that right. This is the story of how a true titan of football was stopped dead in its tracks. So, to really get why this was such a shock, you gotta understand the streak Arsenal were on. Coming into this match, they weren't just winning games. They were an absolute juggernaut. We're talking 11 consecutive wins. 11. A run that just made them look completely and utterly unstoppable.
And it wasn't just their attack either. Their defense was basically a fortress. I mean, get this. They hadn't let in a single goal since September. Think about that. Teams weren't just failing to beat them, they couldn't even score on them. Not once.
So it just begs the question, right? How does a team on a historic run like that, with a defense that's basically impenetrable, how do they suddenly get stopped cold? Well, the answer is in one absolutely thrilling 90-minute match at Sunderland Stadium of Light.
Okay, so let's set the stage for this incredible tactical showdown. You've got the unstoppable force on one side and a team with a very, very cunning plan on the other.
I mean, the contrast between these two teams really couldn't have been more stark. You have Arsenal, the Titans, sitting pretty at the top of the table, everyone expecting them to just cruise to another victory. And then you have Sunderland. Now, don't get me wrong, they were doing great, exceeding expectations and fighting for a European spot. But they were the definitive underdogs here. It was a classic David versus Goliath setup, no doubt about it.
And believe me, that underdog story played out in the most dramatic way you can imagine. This match was a total goal-scoring seesaw, just back and forth from the first whistle to the last. Okay, so the action was just relentless. 36 minutes in, Sunderland does the unthinkable. Dan Ballard scores. And just like that, Arsenal's incredible clean sheet record is shattered. But of course, this is Arsenal we're talking about, so they fight back. Saka gets the equalizer, and then Trossard puts them ahead. Everything looks like it's back on script, business as usual, right up until the 94th minute.
I mean, can you just imagine the shock in that stadium? With literally seconds left on the clock, Brian Brobby finds the back of the net, a dramatic injury-time equalizer. The unstoppable force had finally been held. So, how on earth did they do it?
Now let's be clear, this was not just a lucky break. Oh no, Sunderland came into this match with a very specific and frankly, a very clever game plan. They knew they probably couldn't outplay Arsenal, so they decided they were going to outthink them instead.
What they used are what you'd call disruptive tactics. And the goal here is pretty simple, really. It's not just about playing your own game. It's about actively stopping your opponent from playing theirs. You're trying to throw them completely off their rhythm, using every single tool you've got. So what did that look like in practice? Well, they pressed super aggressively, they launched these lightning-fast counterattacks, and they kept their defense rock solid. You know, pretty standard stuff for an underdog, right? But then, they did something I've never seen before. They actually repositioned the advertising boards around the pitch.
Yeah, the advertising boards. And you might be thinking, why? Well, it was pure genius. See, Arsenal is famous for its incredibly dangerous long throw-ins. It's a huge part of their attack. So by moving those boards closer to the pitch, Sunderland physically cut down the run-up space for Arsenal's players. They neutralized a major weapon in their arsenal. It's such a small change, but it had a massive, massive impact.
But look, even with all these clever tactics, Arsenal still almost walked away with the win. The second half was just a classic story of pure dominance versus absolute sheer determination.
And you can really see it in the match stats. I mean, Arsenal just peppered the Sunderland goal with shot after shot after shot. They were creating chance after chance, just piling on the pressure. But when you look at how many of those actually went in, there's a huge disconnect.
And really, that was the key. For all of their possession, for all of those opportunities they created, Arsenal's attack, for once, just wasn't clinical enough. They just couldn't land that final knockout blow, and that left the door wide open for Sunderland to just hang on.
Which brings us to that final, absolutely heart-stopping sequence of events. First, Arsenal takes the lead. Then, Sunderland just bends, but they do not break. They soak up wave after wave of attack. And then, in the dying seconds of the game, they launch one last desperate counterattack, and Brian Brobby produces a true moment of magic.
And there you have it, the final score. A result that must have felt like a huge victory for Sunderland, and was definitely a stunning setback for the league leaders.
So, what did this all mean in the grand scheme of things? What was the fallout from this incredible match? Well, it was just a single point, but it had a massive ripple effect for both clubs.
The impact was pretty clear-cut. For Arsenal, that amazing 11-match win streak was over, and their lead at the top of the table got a little bit smaller. But for Sunderland, man, that was a massive, hard-earned point that helped solidify their position in the European spots, and more importantly, it proved to everyone and themselves that they could go toe-to-toe with the absolute best.
When you look back at it, this match was just a masterclass in strategy and pure spirit. It was such a powerful testament to Sunderland's tactical discipline, their really clever thinking, and just their incredible resilience against one of the best teams on the planet.
You know, a match like this really proves that power and form aren't everything in football. And it leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. In a game that's so often dominated by giants, can clever tactics, sheer grit, and yeah, maybe even the placement of an advertising board, can all of that truly be the ultimate equalizer?